Once a devotee asked Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharishi, can we think without the mind? Bhagwan said, thoughts can continue like other activities. They do not disturb the supreme consciousness. People surmise the existence of the pure mind in the Jivan Mukta and the personal God. They ask how he could otherwise live and act, but this is only a concession to argument. The pure mind is in fact absolute consciousness. The object to be witnessed and the witness finally merge together and absolute consciousness alone remains. It is not a state of blank or ignorance, but it is the supreme self. The mind of the realized man is sometimes compared to the moon in daytime. The moon shines by reflecting the light of the sun. When the sun has set, the moon is useful for displaying objects. When the sun has risen, no one needs the moon, although its disk is visible in the sky. So it is with the mind and the heart. The mind is made useful by its reflected light. It is used for seeing objects when turned inwards. It merges into the source of illumination which shines by itself with the mind and is then like the moon in daytime. Sometimes people expressed fear at the thought of giving up the ego, but Bhagwan reminded them that they do so every time they go to sleep. People are afraid that when the ego or the mind is killed, the result may be a mere blank and not happiness. What really happens is that the thinker, the object of thought, and the thinking all merge in the one source, which is consciousness and bliss itself, and thus that state is neither inert nor blank. I don't understand why people should be afraid of a state in which all thoughts cease to exist and the mind is killed. They daily experience it in sleep. There is no mind or thought in sleep. Yet, when one rises up from sleep, one says, I slept well. Moreover, in sleep, they surrender the ego in order to lapse into a mere blank, whereas realization is merging into pure consciousness, which is the uttermost bliss. In answer to a visitor, Bhagwan made the following remark: you can have, or rather, you will yourself be, the highest imaginable kind of happiness. All other kind of happiness which you have spoken of as pleasure, joy, happiness, bliss are only reflections of the Ananda which in your true nature you are. It is impossible to describe samadhi since it transcends the mind. It can only be experienced. An American lady asked Bhagwan what his experience of samadhi were. When it was suggested that she should relate her experience and ask if they were right, she replied that Sri Bhagwan's experiences ought to be correct and should be known, whereas her own were unimportant. She wanted to know whether Sri Bhagwan felt his body hot or cold in samadhi, whether he spent the first 3.5 years of his stay in Tiruvannamalai in prayer and so on. Bhagwan said samadhi transcends mind and speech and cannot be described. The state of deep sleep cannot be described, the state of samadhi even less. Devotee asked, but I know that I was unconscious in deep sleep. Bhagwan said, consciousness and unconsciousness are modes of the mind. Samadhi transcends the mind. Devotee asked, still, you can tell me what it is like. Bhagwan said, you will know only when you are in samadhi. Sometimes he referred to the cinema screen as an illustration. Devotee asked, if the realized man and unrealized alike perceive the world, Where is the difference between them? Bhagwan said, when the realized man sees the world, he sees the self that is the substratum of all that is seen. Whether the unrealized man sees the world or not, he is ignorant of his true being, the self. Take the example of a film on a cinema screen. What is there in front of you being before the film begins? Only the screen. On that screen you see the entire show and all appearances. The picture are real, but go and try to take hold of them, and what do you take hold of? The screen on which the picture appears so real. After the play, when the pictures disappear, what remains? The screen again. So it is with the self that alone exists. The pictures come and go. If you hold on to the self, you will not be deceived by the experiences of the pictures, nor does it matter at all whether the pictures appear or disappear. Mr. Banerjee asked Bhagwan, what is the difference between Jivan Mukta and Videha Mukta? Bhagwan said, there is no difference. For those who ask, it is said that the realized man with the body is a Jivan Mukta and that he attains Videha Mukta when he sheds his body. But this difference exists only for the onlooker, not for him. His state is the same before shedding the body and after. We think of him as a human form or as in that form, but he knows that he is the self, the one reality, both inner and outer, which is not bound by any form. There is a verse in the Bhagavata. Bhagwan here quoted the verse in Tamil, which says that just as a drunken man doesn't notice whether he is wearing his shawl or whether it is fallen off, so the realized man is hardly aware of his body, and it makes no difference to him whether it remains or drops off. There are no stages in realization or mukti, there are no degrees of liberation, so there cannot be one stage of liberation with the body and another when the body has been shed. The realized man knows that he is the self and that nothing, neither his body nor anything else, exists but the self. To such a one, what difference could the presence or absence of a body make? When I entered the hall, Bhagwan was answering some questions and was saying there is no difference between the dream and waking state except that the former is short and later long. Both are the product of the mind. Because the waking state lasts longer, we imagine it is be our real state, but actually our real state is what is sometimes called the fourth state, which is always as it is and is unaffected by waking, dream, or sleep. Because we call these three states, we call that a state also. However, it is really just the natural state of the self. A fourth state would simply imply something relative, whereas this is transcendent. Our real nature is liberation, but we imagine that we are bound and we make strenuous efforts to get free, although all the while we are free. This is understood only when we reach that state. Then we shall be surprised to find that we were frantically striving to attain something that we always were and are. An illustration will make this clear. A man goes to sleep in this hall. He dreams he has gone on a tour and is traveling over hill and dale, forest and plain, desert and sea, across various continents. And after many years of weary and strenuous travel, he returns to this country, reaches Tiruvannamalai, enters the ashram, and walks into the hall. Just at the moment he wakes up and finds that he has not moved at all but has been sleeping where he lay down. He has no returned after great efforts to this hall, but was here all the time. It is exactly like that. If it is asked why, being free, we imagine ourselves bound. I answer why, being in the hall, did you imagine you were on a world tour, crossing hill and dale, desert and sea? It is all mind or maya. In truth, there is no bondage.